Hello and welcome again. Thank you all so much for being here. Um, and on MLK Day to recognize this day. It's one of the most recognized day of the year for community service. And something that I found really interesting is that although this holiday was first recognized in the 1980s, it was not observed in all 50 states until the year 2000. So it's a fairly new national holiday.
We are honored to take part in this effort and to recognize Dr. Martin Luther King and this National Day of Service. So, to learn a little about us, my name is Amelia Leto. I'm the Clinical Manager of Quality here at Crisis Text Line, and I joined last year. Also, in 2014, when Crisis Text Line was just getting its legs under itself, I helped design some of the original training content and facilitated the first cohorts of our volunteer crisis counselors that you'll hear more about throughout this presentation. I specialize in suicide prevention and postvention on the local, state, and national levels, and I'm excited to take part in this day not only to honor Dr. King, but one another as we play such vital roles in our own communities. And I came into this work as a volunteer crisis counselor myself at a local center. And I continue to serve my community in many ways by spending my time with our local nonprofits.
Hi, my name is Misha Harris, and I'm a manager of clinical supervision here at Crisis Text Line. And I also started as a volunteer crisis counselor, and then I joined the clinical supervision team. And in total, I've been here for over 4 years. I'm a Navy veteran, and I specialize in forensic psychology and severe and persistent mental illness. I'm delighted to be here with you all today to honor Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service. Dr. King was a key formative figure in this country, and his legacy is something that I am so proud to honor. Dr. King famously said, "Everybody can be great because everybody can serve." In this presentation, my hope is that each and every one of you will connect in some way with this to be able to help serve and strengthen your community by learning how to find the words to provide support and comfort to others in times of crisis.
If you're unfamiliar with Crisis Text Line promotes mental well-being through spreading compassion to people in their moments of need, wherever they are. We provide free 24/7 high-quality text-based mental health interventions at scale by empowering communities of trained, empathetic volunteers to support people in their moments of crisis. In 7 years, we've supported over 5.4 million conversations. So what is a crisis? Let's define that as we look at it here at Crisis Text Line. It is a mental or emotional state that has left the texter in a dangerous condition or unable to cope in a functional and productive way. Our crisis interventions offer in-the-moment support of active crisis situations.
Due to the variety of concerns that are impacting our communities throughout the country, people are showing up for one another in important ways. And we plan to share some valuable skills that you may or may not be familiar with, or they may be presented in a way that has you reconsider how you might approach a situation with someone.
So active listening is truly understanding what another person is expressing and communicating this back to them verbally or non-verbally. When we use these active listening skills, it shifts the focus from us to them. Oftentimes we find ourselves listening in order to respond, right? We miss opportunities to really understand where they're coming from and really showing them that we care what they have to say. So being mindful of not only our own behavior, but the behaviors of others and their own body language. It presents an opportunity to start an uncomfortable conversation. So when we engage in conversations with someone going through a hard time or in an acute crisis, the focus needs to be on them, and it's important to take our time with them. You may be the first person they're willing to talk to about this. Being fully present can be difficult at times. It's a busy world. There's a lot going on in the world, and it's okay to, again, take that deep breath, be in the moment with a person, and be mindful of how you're holding yourself in this shared space. Empathy is the foundation of these conversations and supporting another person. It's being there with them, attempting to step into their shoes without pretending to understand exactly, even if we've been there ourselves. It's leaning into the conversation with the person and inviting them to open more. We make them feel less alone. This is different from sympathy because we aren't feeling sorry for them and expressing regret for their situation. We also don't pity them, and we don't try to distance ourselves from having that difficult conversation. And warm tone can be expressed through the pitch in verbal conversations. Expressing tone through text can be a bit more subtle and challenging, but it's something that we do really well here. In fact, what we say can have the same meaning, but often completely different tones, right? For example, we may ask, "You're not serious, are you?" Which can sound judgmental in comparison to asking, "Are you serious? I can't believe that happened." Although both questions are asking the same information, one comes across warmer than the other.
Reflections of content. Reflection of content conveys that you are actively listening, as well as doing your best to understand the other person's unique experience. Without reflections, it can be really difficult for the other person to know that you're communicating what you want them to hear. Likewise, exploration and reflection of feelings shows the other person that you're listening and communicating what you intend to communicate. So identifying the feelings of a person can be helpful in de-escalation because people who are in crisis, they often feel really numb or too overwhelmed to pinpoint exactly what they feel. Opening up for them to explore these feelings and explore the content is like a check-in, right? So you're making sure that you and the other person are on the same page. Think of it as mirroring and paraphrasing. It shows that you're actively listening and you're understanding what they're truly trying to say. When you're exploring feelings and reflecting on content, you are portraying that you understand, and it also is facilitating the dialogue. So by collecting your thoughts in that thoughtful manner, you're able to better encourage the other person that you're speaking with to let them know this is a safe place and that they can feel comfortable to open up and continue the conversation. And of course, try very hard to do this in a non-judgmental way, right? We want to facilitate dialogue, open up the communication, and not have them feel like they're judged. So, what can you reflect or explore? You can reflect and explore stated or implied feelings, specific content that they're saying, what's being observed non-verbally, and also pay attention to what's not mentioned and what's omitted. Because sometimes in the midst of a crisis, somebody might come to you and tell you that they have this really big emergency about a specific topic. And then when you start talking to them, they're almost avoiding that. They're talking about everything else around and kind of like that missing puzzle piece, right? They're talking about every piece except for the one that you know caused this in the first place. So pay attention to what's being omitted. We also want to encourage you to use strong feeling words. When you use strong feeling words, they not only validate the other person, but they help to normalize that the person is going through something deeply personal. So using strong feeling words, like we have some listed here, they portray the intensity, right? Because sometimes sadness, it's a lot more than just sadness, right? It's heartbreak, it's agonizing. And so those words capture the person's unique experience and they bridge understanding and let them know you're hearing them and you're connecting with them there. I also want to note here that we always want to meet the person where they're at. They may not be ready to let us into their personal world or their crises, but we still just want to let them know that we're here for them in any way that they need without being pushy, right? So sometimes you just have to physically be present, or sometimes it's being virtually present in today's world. So along with the two previous points of active listening and exploring feelings and content, we use open-ended questions. And these are an invitation for exploration and further reflection. Open-ended questions can also aid in understanding. It's a chance for the other person to expand on their thoughts and feelings, and it creates more of that dialogue, right? So that we're having the true back and forth conversation than just a close-ended question. So close-ended questions, the person can answer usually just a simple yes or no. So for example, a closed-ended question could be, sounds like your friend is really upsetting you. Did she do something to you? And the other person could just simply say, yes. And that's it, right? It results in that single word answer, and it doesn't necessarily leave room for them to expand about the situation. So this is one of the reasons why when we use open-ended questions, a lot of them start with how, when, what, or who, and not why. Why, you might ask? Because why questions can sound really judgmental or accusatory, and they can feel like an interrogation. I mean, have you ever been in a situation where you felt bad and somebody kept saying, why? Why did you do that? It's not very warm, and it doesn't necessarily make you want to open up. You might close down. Take a moment to try to reframe that question. So instead of saying something like, why did you do that? Try something like, could you tell me what led you to make that decision?
So how do we do this? It's a collaborative process with another person. And the goal is to empower the individual, allow them to feel heard, and it honors their ability to make their own decisions. By working together, we can help them brainstorm ways to determine what options, if any at that time, and resources, if they're open to them, may be available. So the collaborative process is where we don't give advice, we don't offer suggestions, and we don't offer those resources without their consent. We want this person in this moment to feel heard, to feel supported, and hopefully to feel like they have more options than they had considered when they were carrying this around by themselves. And sometimes we're just not ready to come up with a solution, right? Sometimes I just need to vent. Sometimes I just need to scream. Sometimes I just need to be alone with what's happened. And we aren't here to tell them what their next steps should or shouldn't be. Instead, we discover this through active listening, reflecting on that content, and exploring their feelings, also by using those open-ended questions. So sometimes their next steps may be how they cope. So some questions that you can consider in these conversations are, what kind of help does the person want? What would the person like to have happen? How is the person hoping that you can help? And are they ready to work on a solution? And do they want to work on a solution? Again, this is meeting them where they're at, what they're most comfortable doing in the moment. Sometimes the most comfortable thing is doing nothing, and that's okay. So another piece of this is exploring solutions. At this point in the conversation, working towards, summarizing their plans and what they're going to do next, we can explore their possible solutions and options with the person who's in crisis, right? Identifying supportive people in their life. And if they don't have any current people that they really feel supported by, who did they trust in the past? Was there somebody that really understood where they were at? And would they feel comfortable contacting them again? And is it safe to contact them again? Addressing any potential consequences, asking what would happen if? What would happen if you were to tell your mom you're feeling this way? Would you feel safe and comfortable having that conversation? And often having that conversation is when both people are in a calmer state of mind. It can be really challenging if both people are really upset in the moment. So maybe letting some time pass and then trying that conversation again. And exploring the backup plan in case the first option isn't able to work out, right? If mom's the person you're upset with, is mom married? Could you talk to their partner and maybe get their perspective on the situation and involve them to help you be this bridge, right? And if you're knowledgeable and so inclined to share, you can provide education, right? You can help normalize and validate their feelings, sharing information about whatever is concerning to them. Maybe they're going through a state of depression and you're either a trained mental health professional or a peer with lived experience, and they're open to that conversation. And if you're familiar with referrals in your area, offer those. Have you considered going to a local crisis center? Would you feel safe and comfortable doing that and exploring what that may look like for you? And sometimes if you're in the position, offering to go with them and just being a support person for them if you're able to.